In the lively and bustling atmosphere of the classroom, where the vibrant chatter of students filled the air with anticipation for the approaching recess, Julian, the dedicated history teacher with a profound commitment to his students' welfare, noticed a troubling shift in his star pupil, Mato. Once an enthusiastic and radiant presence, Mato had recently become a shadow of his former self, his usual vivacity replaced by a haunting detachment. Perched at the back of the room, Mato's once bright eyes now appeared hollow, as though he were gazing through the very fabric of the classroom into a distant and unreachable realm. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The contrast between his current state and the infectious zeal he typically exuded was striking, leaving Julian with a heavy heart and an overwhelming sense of unease. Julian had seen similar distress signals before in the students from the impoverished community he served. Each time it was as though a veil of sorrow and struggle had descended upon their bright minds, dimming their once clear aspirations. Julian, ever the empathetic mentor, had tirelessly devoted himself to finding ways to support and uplift these students, hoping to guide them through the dark times and keep their educational dreams alive. Yet, as he observed Mato's unsettling transformation, Julian's anxiety intensified. He couldn't help but fear that Mato might be entangled in troubling circumstances beyond the safety of the classroom. With the final bell ringing, signaling the end of the school day, Julian took a cautious step toward Mato, who was quietly gathering his belongings. "Mato, you've been unusually quiet lately. Is everything all right?" Julian's voice was a soothing balm, yet it carried an undercurrent of deep-seated concern. Mato's eyes met Julian's for a fleeting moment, and Julian glimpsed a fleeting, inscrutable emotion that flickered across the boy's face. "I'm fine, sir. Just a bit tired," Mato responded, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of students flooding the hallways. Julian's heart ached at the sight of the boy's feeble attempt to mask his struggles. Unswayed by Mato's brief and unconvincing reply, Julian nodded with a look of sympathy, yet his instincts screamed that something was amiss. Driven by an earnest desire to uncover the truth and offer his support, Julian decided to follow Mato discreetly after school, keeping a respectful distance, but determined to shed light on the shadowy mystery that enveloped his once joyful student. To Julian's astonishment, Mato veered from his usual route, heading towards an old, dilapidated building that seemed almost forgotten by time. Julian's heart began to pound with a mixture of dread and concern. He worried that Mato might be involved in something dangerous or illicit. Driven by a blend of fear and curiosity, Julian followed at a respectful distance, his anxiety mounting with each step. As he approached the entrance of the crumbling edifice, Julian's eyes filled with tears as he witnessed an extraordinary and deeply moving scene. Inside, Mato stood before a battered blackboard, diligently transcribing every lesson Julian had imparted that day. Behind him, a small group of impoverished children sat attentively, their eyes fixed on the makeshift lesson with a rare intensity. These children, who had no access to formal education, were absorbing the knowledge Mato passionately shared with them, their faces lit with hope and concentration. It was evident that Mato was providing them with a chance to learn, a chance they had been denied either by circumstance or by the ignorance of their parents. Julian's chest swelled with a profound sense of pride and admiration, even as tears streamed uncontrollably down his face. Hidden in the shadow of the doorway, he observed Mato's heartfelt dedication as the boy carefully repeated and elaborated on every detail Julian had taught earlier. The teacher watched as Mato fielded questions from his young students, his heart tightening at the sight of such selfless commitment. Julian marveled at the boy's ability to recall and convey each lesson with precision, his spirit undiminished by the hardships he faced. When the makeshift class concluded, Mato bade farewell to his students with a gentle smile, his weariness evident as he slowly turned to leave. Julian followed, maintaining his distance, as Matto trudged towards his modest home. The boy's steps were hesitant and almost reluctant, as if each step away from the abandoned building was a painful separation from a small sanctuary of purpose and hope. As they neared Matto's simple dwelling, Julian observed the boy's demeanor grow increasingly despondent. The once energetic and determined student now seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, his posture slumped in visible sadness. Julian waited patiently until Matto entered his home, his heart aching at the boy's evident struggle. Julian pondered the deeper reasons behind Matto's distress, wondering how he might offer support to this remarkable young man who was so clearly dedicated to making a difference, despite his hardships. Julian stood outside Matto's humble residence, his mind racing and his heart pounding with anxiety. The peaceful afternoon was shattered by a jarring and terrifying sound, the piercing shrieks of a heated argument emanating from within the house. Each scream was like a knife to Julian's heart, the raw intensity of the altercation sending shivers down his spine. Determined to help Matto, Julian's mind raced through possible actions and strategies. He knew he had to act swiftly and decisively to prevent further harm. With each passing second, the screams grew more intense, and the abusive words that cut through the walls were unbearable. Julian's resolve hardened as he whispered to himself, "Matto doesn't deserve this." His heart ached for the boy who had shown such selflessness and dedication. With a deep breath to steady his nerves, Julian took a resolute step towards the front door, his determination unwavering. As he approached, Julian felt the weight of his responsibility press heavily upon him. The screams continued to echo down the quiet street, a distressing reminder of the urgency of the situation. Julian knocked on the door with a firm resolve, his knuckles rapping against the wood with a sense of urgency. "I need to intervene. I can't let this continue," he thought, steeling himself for what was to come. The door creaked open slightly, and a gruff voice, likely that of Matto's father, cut through the commotion. "Who is it?" The tone was laced with irritation and a hint of menace. "It's Julian," Matto's teacher Julian called out with a sense of purpose. "We need to talk about what's happening here. I heard the screams, and I'm concerned for Matto's well-being." He met the eyes of Christopher, the man he recognized from Matto's school records. The man's expression was one of clear displeasure, his frown deepening as he regarded the unwelcome visitor. "Yes, that's me. But you have no right to intrude into our matters," Christopher snapped, his voice rising with hostility. Julian remained calm, his voice steady and compassionate. "I care deeply about Matto. It's difficult to ignore the distress signals I've observed. He's an intelligent and kind-hearted boy who doesn't deserve to be in such a painful situation." Julian's words were imbued with genuine concern, and he hoped they would resonate with Christopher, reaching past the anger and resistance to touch a sliver of empathy within him. Christopher's response was a menacing growl. "Mind your own business, teacher, or you'll regret getting involved." The barely concealed threat sent a shiver down Julian's spine, but it did nothing to erode his resolve. Despite the palpable danger, Julian's determination remained steadfast. Recognizing that further conversation would only lead to more hostility and that he had to act swiftly to protect Matteo, Julian firmly declared, "Don't hurt Matteo. I'm not intimidated by threats." He offered a curt nod as a farewell and immediately set off for the nearest police station, his heart pounding with urgency. At the station, Julian quickly relayed the entire distressing situation to the officer on duty. He described Matteo's sudden change in behavior at school, the terrifying argument he had overheard, and his deep-seated concern for the boy's safety. "I hope we can intervene before it's too late," Julian implored, his voice laden with anxiety. The officer took detailed notes, his face a mask of seriousness that matched the gravity of Julian's report. Returning home that evening, Julian's mind was consumed with worry. "I did the right thing by not standing idly by, but at what cost?" he pondered, haunted by the fear of potential repercussions from Christopher. "I hope Matteo is safe and that the authorities have taken appropriate action." Julian's thoughts were troubled, weighed down by a deep-seated concern for his students' well-being. The next morning, as Julian prepared for another day at school, a knot of apprehension tightened in his stomach. Upon arrival, he was greeted with unsettling news: Matteo had not appeared for classes. "What has Christopher done?" Julian muttered to himself, his heart sinking with dread. Driven by a fierce determination to find Matteo and ensure his safety, Julian launched an immediate search. He visited all the places where Matteo was known to frequent: the quaint little library where the boy loved to read, the school park where he often played with friends, and even the student snack bar where he used to buy his favorite treats. At each location, Julian was met with disappointment. No one had seen Matteo, and his absence remained a troubling mystery. Desperate for any clue, Julian decided to revisit the abandoned building where he had witnessed Matteo teaching the local children. To his dismay, the building was eerily empty. Undeterred, Julian proceeded to Matteo's house, fearing that the boy might be confined within. He knocked on the door repeatedly, but the silence that greeted him was heavy with foreboding. The house appeared to be deserted. Resolute and undeterred, Julian returned to school. He continued his search, walking through the corridors with a mix of determination and fear, driven by an urgent need to find Matteo and ensure his safety. His mind raced with worry, each unanswered question heightening his anxiety. As Julian entered the teacher's lounge, he was met with anxious faces and hushed conversations among his colleagues. Their worried expressions only deepened Julian's sense of foreboding. One of his fellow teachers approached him with troubling news: Matteo had not shown up for school that day, a concerning anomaly for a student known for his reliability. "He never misses without warning. Something is wrong." Julian murmured to himself, his anxiety swelling as hope seemed to slip through his fingers like sand. Determined to find any lead, Julian turned to Matteo's friends. Their concern mirrored his own, but they had no information on his whereabouts. One friend revealed, with a heavy heart, that Matteo had been unusually anxious in recent days, though the cause of his distress remained unclear. "He was just on edge, like something was seriously bothering him," the friend said, casting a sorrowful glance at the floor. With no additional clues and a growing sense of dread, Julian returned to his classroom, hoping to find a clue that might reveal where Matteo had gone. He began sifting through Matteo's notebooks, searching for any note or scrap of paper that might hint at a plan or refuge. Maybe he mentioned something in a project or exercise, Julian thought, rapidly flipping through the pages. His hopeful search was abruptly interrupted by Severino, the school principal, who entered the room with a somber expression that immediately put Julian on high alert. "Julian, I need to inform you about something important," Severino began, his tone grave. "Matteo's father came by this morning while you were teaching. He's withdrawing Matteo from school, citing that you've been too involved in their personal affairs." The principal's discomfort was palpable as he continued, "I must ask you to cease your involvement in this matter. If you continue, I may have to take severe measures against you. We must maintain professional boundaries with our students' families." Julian's heart sank as he listened to Severino's words. He saw through the principal's polite facade, Dade, and recognized the underlying message: if he persisted in helping Matteo, he risked losing his job. Anger and frustration surged within him. Christopher can't just cut Matteo off from the world like that, Julian thought, feeling a fierce resolve take hold. "I will do whatever it takes to protect this boy. The principal should be supporting me in this effort, but it's clear he prefers to ignore the issues. If I must, I'll tackle this alone, even if it means risking my position." Julian's voice was firm and resolute, though his hands trembled with the weight of the decision he faced. As soon as Severino departed, Julian's resolve hardened into a steely determination. Unwilling to let Matteo's plight go unresolved, he decided to shift his strategy. Julian set out to connect with community organizations and social services that could offer support to underprivileged children and their families. His goal was to enlist their help in assisting Matteo and, if necessary, to involve legal authorities to ensure the boy's safety. Julian immersed himself in this new mission, dedicating countless hours each day to reaching out to various agencies. He diligently wrote letters, made numerous phone calls, and personally visited local charities, each interaction fueled by his urgent desire to secure help for Matteo. Julian also used his evenings to conduct thorough research on community resources and legal avenues, aiming to build a robust case that would compel action. His tireless efforts eventually bore fruit. One day, Julian received encouraging news from a local nonprofit organization dedicated to child protection. The organization, deeply concerned about Matteo's welfare, agreed to take on his case and promised immediate intervention. Julian was flooded with relief and a renewed sense of hope, knowing that the wheels of justice and care were set into motion. In the following days, Julian waited with bated breath for updates. When the news finally arrived, it was a complex blend of hope and concern. The organization had indeed acted swiftly. They had confronted Christopher about his abusive behavior and had involved the authorities to address the situation. Matteo was now receiving the support and counseling he desperately needed, and plans were in place to ensure he could continue his education in a safer, more supportive environment. Julian's relief was profound, though his concern for Matteo's long-term well-being persisted. He understood that the journey to recovery and stability would be arduous, but he felt a deep sense of accomplishment knowing that his efforts had made a tangible difference in the boy's life. Julian's unwavering dedication and perseverance had paved the way for a brighter future for Matteo. Despite the personal sacrifices and challenges Julian had faced throughout this ordeal, he emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. The experience solidified his commitment to advocating for his students and ensuring they received the care and support necessary for their success. Julian's actions demonstrated that standing up for what is right, even at great personal risk, could lead to meaningful change and protect those who are most vulnerable. As Julian watched Matteo walk into the room, his heart ached with a mix of relief and concern. Without hesitation, he approached the boy and took a seat beside him, gently grasping his hand in a gesture of warmth and reassurance. "How are you holding up?" Matteo Julian inquired softly, his voice imbued with genuine care. Matteo's gaze fell to the floor as he nervously fiddled with the hem of his shirt. "I'm doing everything I can to find a way for us to be together again," he began, his voice trembling with a mixture of determination and distress. Julian leaned closer, his eyes filled with empathy. "I understand, Matteo, but I'm also deeply worried about the children you were teaching. I fear that everything we've worked for might be at risk," he admitted, his voice carrying the weight of his concern. Matteo's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he spoke, his fear palpable. "I'm afraid I might never return to school or see you again," he confessed, his words echoing his profound anxiety about the future. Julian shook his head gently, a firm resolve in his tone. "Don't think like that, Matteo. I promise you, I won't rest until you're safe and we can return to our lives. You're incredibly strong, and together we can overcome any obstacle. Once everything is sorted out, we'll find a way to support the children you've been teaching. We'll make sure they're not left behind," Julian vowed, his words infused with a hopeful promise. "You're not alone in this," Julian continued, his voice soothing. He spent a few more moments by Matteo's side, engaging with the boy in light-hearted conversation, trying to ease his fears. Their time together was cut short by the arrival of the social worker, who gently reminded them that their visit was nearing its end. Julian nodded in acknowledgement, but his heart felt heavy at the thought of leaving Matteo behind, even if only temporarily. Before parting, Julian leaned in closer, his tone firm yet comforting. "Matteo, I need you to know something important. None of this is your fault. and you are not alone in this fight. I will stand by you, no matter what happens." Matteo's eyes filled with tears as he hugged Julian quickly, the brief embrace a testament to the deep bond between them. Julian watched as the boy's tears mingled with the hope in his eyes, and he felt a profound commitment to ensuring that Matteo's journey towards safety and security would not be in vain. "Thank you, sir. Please don't forget me here." Matteo's voice quivered with emotion as he clung to Julian, his eyes shimmering with a mix of hope and fear. As Julian left the shelter, he felt the immense weight of responsibility bearing down on him more than ever. The upcoming legal battle promised to be arduous, but the unwavering trust that Matteo had placed in him ignited a fierce determination within Julian. The promise to protect Matteo, no matter the cost, became his driving force. As he drove home, his mind raced through every detail of the tasks ahead, mentally preparing himself to advocate not just as a teacher, but as a guardian committed to securing Matteo's safety and future. Returning to the office of Charles, Julian's emotions were a turbulent blend of resolve and anxiety. The conversation with Matteo had solidified his resolve to fight relentlessly for the boy's well-being. The sense of duty that had taken root in his heart was now burning with an unquenchable flame. Charles was already immersed in organizing the case files when Julian arrived. The office was a chaotic mix of papers, legal documents, and investigative reports, a testament to the gravity of their mission. Julian took a seat in front of the cluttered desk, the weight of their task palpable in the air. "We need to dig deeper into Christopher's background," Julian said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "I have a feeling that this is more than just an isolated case of neglect. There might be a pattern we haven't uncovered yet." Charles nodded in agreement, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he initiated a search for old records. "I'll look into all previous police and social service reports," he confirmed, his tone resolute. "There's a good chance that something important was overlooked or unreported before." Julian watched as Charles sifted through digital files, his anxiety mingling with a spark of hope. Every click and keystroke felt like a step closer to unraveling the truth and securing justice for Matteo. Julian's mind was a whirlwind of strategic plans and legal strategies, each thought dedicated to the mission of protecting the vulnerable boy who had entrusted him with his safety. The investigation was just beginning, but Julian's commitment was unwavering. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the promise he had made to Matteo and the newfound resolve in his heart propelled him forward. As Charles continued his research, Julian prepared himself for the intense battle that lay ahead, determined to ensure that Matteo's story would end with a positive resolution. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of activity and tension. Charles and Julian delved into an overwhelming stack of documents, their eyes scanning each page with meticulous focus, searching for any signs of abuse that might have slipped through the cracks. Each piece of evidence they uncovered heightened the urgency to protect Matteo and brought the gravity of his situation into sharper focus. "Julian, take a look at this," Charles said, his voice tinged with excitement as he pointed to his computer screen. Julian leaned in, his heart pounding as he read the report. "There's a report from a neighbor dated years ago," Charles explained, his tone laden with a mix of relief and frustration. "It details frequent screams coming from Christopher's house. At the time, it was dismissed as a minor family dispute, not warranting further investigation. The discovery was a breakthrough, but it was clear that their work was far from finished. Determined to build a stronger case, Julian and Charles decided to gather additional testimonies. They spent the following days navigating the streets of Christopher's neighborhood, talking to residents who might shed light on the family's dynamics. Many neighbors were reluctant to speak out, wary of potential repercussions. However, Julian's earnest demeanor and genuine concern won them over, and they began to open up about their observations. An elderly woman who had watched the family from her window for years provided a poignant account. She spoke of seeing Matteo often playing alone, his appearance reflecting neglect. "I always thought the poor boy needed more care," she said, her voice heavy with sympathy. "It broke my heart to see him so isolated and unattended." Each testimony they collected added depth and complexity to their case, weaving a more detailed narrative of Matteo's hardships. As the evidence mounted, Julian and Charles were increasingly confident in their position, but they were also acutely aware of the opposition they would face. The fight was far from over, and the road ahead was fraught with obstacles. Just as the date for the next hearing loomed, an unexpected but crucial witness came forward, an old friend of Matteo's mother. This individual had first-hand knowledge of Christopher's aggressive behavior towards his wife before Matteo was born and the subsequent mistreatment of the boy. Their testimony promised to provide invaluable insight into Christopher's patterns of behavior, potentially turning the tide in their favor. Julian felt a renewed surge of hope and determination. Each piece of evidence, each testimony, and each revelation brought them closer to securing justice for Matteo. As the hearing date drew near, Julian was resolute in his mission. He knew that the battle would be hard-fought, but his commitment to Matteo's safety and well-being remained unwavering. The fight for justice had intensified, and Julian was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, fueled by the belief that every effort made would bring them one step closer to a brighter future for the boy he had vowed to protect. The atmosphere was charged with tension as Julian and Charles left the cafe, buoyed by the man's agreement to testify. The decision was a significant step forward, bringing new momentum to their case. Julian knew that the path ahead would still be challenging, but having this crucial witness on their side felt like a breakthrough. He and Charles were determined to use every resource available to protect Matteo and hold Christopher accountable. As the day of the hearing approached, the media attention intensified. The courthouse was swarmed with reporters and cameras, all eager to cover the high-profile case. Julian, used to the quieter side of teaching, found himself thrust into the spotlight, his every move scrutinized by the press. Despite the distraction, he remained focused on the task at hand. The media frenzy was driven by the shocking details of Matteo's abuse and the high stakes of the case. Julian's role in bringing the situation to light and his commitment to Matteo's well-being had made him a figure of public interest. While the attention brought a new level of pressure, it also meant increased visibility for the cause. Inside the courthouse, Julian and Charles worked diligently to prepare for the hearing. They reviewed the witness testimonies, organized the evidence, and strategized how to present their case most effectively. The stakes were high, and they knew that every detail mattered. When the day of the hearing arrived, Julian was resolute. He walked into the courtroom with a mix of determination and nervousness, ready to confront the challenges ahead. The presence of the media outside only fueled his resolve to see justice served. The hearing began with the presentation of evidence, followed by the testimonies of the witnesses, including Matteo's mother's friend. Julian watched as the friend took the stand, his testimony painting a vivid picture of Christopher's abusive behavior. The friend's courage in speaking out, despite his fears, added weight to the case. Julian could see the impact of each testimony on the courtroom, sensing that the tide was turning in their favor. The case against Christopher was compelling, but Julian knew that the outcome was still uncertain. The courtroom was a battleground, with both sides presenting their arguments and evidence. Julian remained focused and determined to advocate for Matteo and ensure that his voice was heard. As the hearing progressed, Julian's confidence grew. He saw the support of the witnesses and the strength of the evidence working in their favor. The media coverage, while overwhelming, also served as a reminder of the importance of their fight. Julian's commitment to Matteo and his unwavering belief in justice propelled him forward. By the end of the hearing, Julian felt a cautious optimism. The case had been presented with clarity and conviction, and he hoped that the judge would recognize the severity of Christopher's actions and make a decision that would secure Matteo's safety and future. Leaving the courthouse, Julian faced a sea of reporters and flashing cameras. Despite the chaos, he remained composed, knowing that their efforts had made a difference. Matteo's future was now in the hands of the court, but Julian's dedication to the boy and the cause would not waver. As he returned to his daily life, Julian felt a mix of relief and anticipation. The fight for Matteo was far from over, but the progress made gave him hope. With the support of his colleagues, the testimony of crucial witnesses, and the growing public awareness, Julian remained steadfast in his mission to protect Matteo and ensure that justice was served. Julian's face showed deep concern as he read through the proposed terms of Christopher's deal. It was clear that the offer was designed to manipulate the situation in Christopher's favor while avoiding any real consequences for his abusive behavior. "I agree," Charles said, nodding in agreement. "We need to ensure that Matteo's voice is heard in this. He should have a say in what happens to him, especially when it involves his father. We should discuss this with him as soon as possible." Julian took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "We should also make sure we have all the facts about the safety measures and future support systems that would be in place if we were to agree to this deal. Matteo's well-being must be our top priority." Charles nodded, and they agreed to meet with Matteo and his social worker to discuss the offer. They headed to the waiting room where Matteo was sitting with his social worker. The boy looked up with a mixture of hope and apprehension as Julian and Charles approached. "Matteo, we need to talk to you about a new development in your case," Julian began gently. "Your father has proposed a deal that would allow him to keep visiting you and ensure your education continues without interruptions, but it would mean dropping all the charges against him." Matteo's eyes widened, and he looked at Julian with a mix of confusion and fear. "What does that mean for me? Will he be able to hurt me again?" Julian crouched down to be at eye level with Matteo, his voice filled with reassurance. "We're here to make sure you are safe and that your voice is heard. This deal could keep you in contact with your father but doesn't guarantee your safety or hold him accountable for what he's done. We want to make sure that you understand all your options and that your feelings are considered." Matteo's social worker, a kind-faced woman named Karen, added, "We have to make sure that whatever decision is made, it prioritizes your safety and well-being. You don't have to decide right now, but you must know what's being proposed." Matteo looked down, his small hands fidgeting. "I don't want to be hurt anymore, but I also don't want to lose my family. What should I do?" Julian felt a pang of sorrow for the boy. "Matteo, it's okay to feel conflicted. We will explore every option to ensure that you are safe and that you have the support you need. If you have any concerns or questions, we will work through them together. Your safety and happiness are what matter most." The meeting was emotional and heartfelt, with Julian and Charles ensuring that Matteo had all the information he needed to make an informed decision. They also discussed the support systems that would be in place, regardless of the outcome, to ensure Matteo's continued well-being and education. After the meeting, Julian and Charles returned to their office, determined to continue advocating for Matteo's best interests. They prepared to address the court with a detailed plan outlining their concerns about the deal and their commitment to ensuring Matteo's safety. As the hearing resumed, Julian took the stand to present their case, emphasizing the importance of holding Christopher accountable while prioritizing Matteo's well-being. The courtroom was silent as Julian spoke passionately, laying out the case for why the proposed deal was insufficient and why a more comprehensive solution was necessary. The judge listened carefully, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Julian's commitment to Matteo and the thorough preparation of their case gave them a strong position as they awaited the court's decision. In the end, Julian's tireless efforts and unwavering dedication to Matteo's safety and future were evident. Regardless of the outcome, Julian felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had fought for what was right and had done everything possible to protect the boy who had become so important to him. Matteo looked up at Julian, his eyes filled with trust and hope. "I understand, but I'd rather be with someone who cares about me and makes me feel safe than go back to someone who hurt me." Julian nodded, feeling the weight of Matteo's words. "You're right, Matteo. Your safety and well-being are the most important things. We'll make sure that whatever happens, you are in a safe place and surrounded by people who truly care about you." The sound of footsteps signaled the return of the courtroom session, and Julian took a deep breath. He was resolved to stand firm on his decision, bolstered by Matteo's trust and the support of his legal team. They would fight to ensure that Matteo's needs were prioritized and that Julian was prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they returned to the courtroom, Julian felt a renewed sense of purpose. The case was about more than just legal arguments. It was about making a meaningful difference in a young boy's life. With Matteo's heartfelt plea resonating in his mind, Julian was ready to challenge the status quo and advocate for what was right. The judge took her seat, and the proceedings began. Julian and Charles presented their case with clarity and conviction, arguing that the proposed deal did not sufficiently address the safety concerns and that Matteo's well-being required a more robust solution. The courtroom listened intently as Julian spoke, detailing the evidence and testimonies that painted a clear picture of Christopher's past behavior and the potential risks involved in the proposed deal. Julian emphasized Matteo's expressed wishes and the importance of a stable and secure environment for his future. The tension in the room was palpable as Julian concluded his argument, making a compelling case for why Matteo should not be returned to his father. The judge took note of the strong arguments presented and adjourned the session to deliberate on the matter. As the courtroom cleared, Julian and Charles exchanged a look of cautious optimism. They had done everything they could to advocate for Matteo's best interests, and now it was up to the judge to make a decision. Julian returned to Matteo, who was anxiously waiting in the courthouse hallway. "How are you holding up?" Julian asked gently. Matteo looked up with a mixture of anxiety and hope. "I'm scared, but I'm glad you're fighting for me. I trust you." Julian gave Matteo a reassuring smile. "We'll get through this. You're strong, and you've already shown so much courage. Whatever happens, we'll make sure you're safe and cared for." The days that followed were filled with anticipation as Julian and Charles awaited the judge's decision. The media continued to cover the case, and the public's attention was focused on Matteo's plight and Julian's determined advocacy. Finally, the day of the ruling arrived. Julian and Matteo, accompanied by Charles, entered the courtroom with a mix of nervousness and hope. The judge took her seat and delivered the verdict, announcing that Matteo would not be returned to his father and that a suitable guardian would be appointed to ensure his safety and well-being. Julian felt a wave of relief wash over him as he looked at Matteo, who was smiling through tears of joy. The decision was a victory, not just for Matteo, but for Julian and everyone who had fought tirelessly on his behalf. As they left the courthouse, Julian felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Matteo was on his way to a brighter and safer future, and Julian had played a crucial role in making that happen. The bond between Julian and Matteo had grown stronger throughout the ordeal, and Julian was committed to continuing to support the boy in any way he could. The battle had been hard-fought, but Julian knew that it had been worth every effort. Matteo's future was now full of possibilities, and Julian was grateful to have been a part of that transformation. Julian stood before the court, his heart pounding with the gravity of the moment. He looked at Matteo, who sat with a mixture of hope and anxiety in his eyes. Julian took a deep breath, summoning all his resolve as he began to speak. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we stand at a crossroads today, one that will determine the future of a young boy who has already endured more than any child should. Matteo has shown incredible resilience and strength in the face of adversity. And we must ensure that his future is one of safety and stability." Julian paused to let his words resonate. He glanced at Christopher, who sat with a guarded expression, and then at Matteo, who was holding Julian's hand tightly. Matteo's father, Christopher, has offered a deal that would return Matteo to his custody, albeit with some conditions. However, this offer does not address the fundamental issue at hand: Matteo's well-being and his right to live free from fear and harm. The evidence presented shows a pattern of neglect and abuse that cannot be ignored. Julian's voice grew firmer as he continued. The argument that Matteo must be with a biological relative, regardless of their treatment, fails to acknowledge the reality of his situation. Family ties are important, but they should not come at the cost of a child's safety and mental health. Matteo has found a haven and genuine care with us, and this should be valued above all. He turned to address the jury directly, his gaze steady and earnest. "We are not asking for anything extraordinary. We are asking for what is right, a safe environment where Matteo can thrive, surrounded by people who love and care for him. We have all seen the evidence, heard the testimonies, and understood the stakes. This is not just a legal matter, it's a moral one." Julian concluded with a heartfelt appeal. "I ask you to consider Matteo's future, his safety, and his well-being. This child deserves more than just the bare minimum. He deserves a chance to grow up in an environment where he feels valued and protected. Please do not let him be returned to a situation where he might suffer again. Ensure that his future is as bright as it can be, filled with the love and care he so desperately needs." As Julian stepped down, he felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had made his case with sincerity and passion, but now it was up to the jury to decide. The jury deliberated intensely, the tension in the courtroom palpable as they reached their verdict. Julian sat beside Matteo, holding his hand and offering a reassuring smile, even as the uncertainty gnawed at him. Finally, the jury returned, and the courtroom fell silent once more. The judge read the verdict aloud, and Julian's heart raced with anticipation. After careful consideration, the court has decided to grant custody of Matteo to Julian, based on the compelling evidence of the child's best interests and the unsafe conditions under which he was previously living. The proposed deal from Christopher has been rejected, and Matteo will remain in a safe and supportive environment. Cheers and relieved sighs filled the courtroom, and Matteo's face lit up with a joyful expression. He hugged Julian tightly, tears of happiness streaming down his face. Julian looked around the courtroom, seeing the support and approval of those who had been following the case. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment and gratitude for the support that had made this victory possible. As they left the courthouse, Julian and Matteo walked together, knowing that the road ahead would still have its challenges. But with the legal battles behind them and a future of safety and care ahead, they faced it with renewed hope and determination. Julian knew that the fight for Matteo's well-being was worth every effort, and he was committed to ensuring that the boy's future would be filled with the love and security he deserved. As Julian and Matteo stepped out of the courthouse, the weight of their battle seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of triumph and relief. The day had been long and challenging, but the outcome had affirmed that their efforts had not been in vain. Julian looked down at Matteo, who was now radiating a mix of joy and gratitude. "I'm so proud of you, Matteo. You were incredibly brave throughout this whole process." Matteo's smile widened, his earlier fears now replaced by a hopeful anticipation of what lay ahead. "I just wanted to be safe, and I knew you would help me. Thank you for believing in me." Julian placed a reassuring hand on Matteo's shoulder. "You showed so much strength and resilience. It was your courage that helped us make the right decision. Now, we can focus on building a future where you feel loved and secure." As they walked towards Julian's car, Julian couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had shared. The path had been fraught with obstacles, but the support from the community, the determination of the legal team, and Matteo's fortitude had led to this moment of victory. The drive home was filled with a sense of calm and anticipation. Julian and Matteo talked about their plans for the future, discussing activities Matteo enjoyed and dreams he had for his new life. Julian was eager to ensure that Matteo felt integrated and supported, with every opportunity to thrive. When they arrived home, Julian prepared a small celebration for Matteo, his favorite snacks, a cozy movie night, and a space where he could unwind and enjoy his newfound safety. Julian watched as Matteo settled into his new environment, a look of contentment on his face. The next few weeks were dedicated to helping Matteo adjust to his new routine and ensuring that he had the support he needed to continue his education and emotional recovery. Julian remained steadfast in his commitment, attending meetings with counselors, enrolling Matteo in school, and providing a stable and nurturing home environment. Together, they faced each day with renewed hope and optimism, knowing that their journey was far from over, but that they had made significant strides toward a brighter future. Julian's dedication had not only transformed Matteo's life, but also reinforced his sense of purpose and resolve. As they looked forward, Julian and Matteo embraced the promise of new beginnings, knowing that they had overcome tremendous challenges and were now moving toward a future filled with possibilities and hope. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through Julian and Matteo's story. We've seen how determination, compassion, and unwavering support can transform lives and bring about positive change, even in the face of daunting challenges. As we wrap up this video, we want to hear from you. What have you learned from Julian and Matteo's journey? How will you apply these lessons in your own life? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. We'd love to hear how this story has impacted you. If you found this video inspiring, please leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories and messages. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.